So I feel like I have been excluded and judged based on my ethnicity before. One time in particular that comes to mind was Mill and I think, we were married because we were living in this area, and we were at a store, just kind of one of those supermarket type stores, and I think whatever we had been looking for, we didn't find. So at this point in time, we were just wandering and just having fun and just like spending some time kind of doing light shopping, not really looking for anything in particular. And we ended up in the electronics section and we're looking around. And after some time, I felt like a presence behind me, and I looked behind and I saw that there was an employee, and he was a young kid behind us, and he wasn't really doing much of anything, didn't really look like he was restocking or checking anything. He was just kind of lingering. So we walked down the next aisle, and lo and behold, I look back and he's following us again. I think we went down one more aisle just because I don't want to be paranoid, but this is just what was my impression. And he's again following us, and again not doing anything with the shelves. Wasn't really quite subtle. So at this point in time, I just kind of felt my stomach drop and just kind of felt upset, just because I was realizing there's really no reason for him to be following us except for that we are colored people in an electronics section. So I don't remember if I said, hey, let's go, because I was like, I think he's following us, let's just go. And we left. And so it's, it was, luckily that is not something that happens often, but I think it definitely has painted a perception in my mind. So especially since that time, when I am in certain stores and around certain products and things, I don't always feel like I belong.
Yeah, I think for me, a lot of this started to happen after 9/11, because I had a goatee at the time, and I remember my parents were like terrified. My parents said, Milan, shave your beard, because they're like, they were worried that I was gonna get jumped because I looked Middle Eastern, right? And people would have preconceived notions, and it was a tough time for people that looked like me back then, right? But I have felt judged from that regard. I've even been called some derogatory names that I won't share here. And then in one time, I remember right here in Florence, actually, when Brewster's used to be open on 42, I was there with my small group, and we were just hanging out. It was in the evening, and there was a car that drove by, and some people shouted at me, and they called me a sand N-word. And I'm like, oh, that really hit me hard. There was a lot of anger. It just tainted the whole night. And I could remember that scene here 12 years later. It doesn't leave you. So yeah, I've absolutely felt excluded. I felt like those are some really long fences they put up and some really, short tables, the complete opposite values that we're trying to promote here at the Vineyard. With respect to our kids, we have, again, like she said in the beginning, we have 2 children. We have our son, Sean, who is 6, and then our daughter, Quinn, who's 5. And, they're mixed children, right? And they look black for the most part. And so...
You think so?
I kind of think they do. Quinn's, she kind of looks like me, but I think so. I have no hair. They have froze. So... we used to have these conversations where we were worried, where there's not a lot of colored folks in Northern Kentucky, right? And so we were worried about our kids being accepted in school. Would they be ostracized? Would people think they were, funny looking? And so we would worry about that. And even as they grow up and get older, we know that one day we're going to have a serious conversation with Sean and Quinn, and we're going to have to tell them that people may not like you just because you look different than them. And I think that's going to be such a hard conversation for a little kid because they're so innocent, but these are the kind of things that unfortunately we have to think about and struggle with. We don't want to have this conversation with our kids, but the reality is we're going to have to, right? And one day we're probably going to tell them, here's how you stop when an officer pulls you over. Here's where you need to put your hands. And we respect the law, but We just have to go by what's happening in the nation, and we want to make sure they're respectful, that they're obedient, and so we have to have different types of conversations with our kids than maybe somebody that doesn't look like us.
To me, it just makes sense. Like, it doesn't seem like something out of the ordinary. I feel that if we are a church that's really acting like Jesus, this is what he did, right? He was hanging out with people no matter what they looked like, no matter what their profession was, people who are obviously very different than him, but he always had room at his table for them. And with Jesus, there were no fences. He welcomed everybody. So to me, if we're going to be a church that does that, it just makes sense. I feel like this is what a church should do.